Minister for Justice, Joe McCallan. You're very welcome to the studio.
Thanks very much, Claire.
So if we were down in the district court in Dublin now, it would be very quiet, very little happening. Second day of the withdrawal of services from solicitors involved in the criminal legal aid scheme. You said it's deeply regrettable, but they say that you are the cause. You have created a crisis now in the criminal courts by imposing this new payment model without getting solicitors on board. Do you accept any responsibility for the disruption we're now seeing?
I don't. If you look at the engagement that I had with the Law Society, it started with officials in my department meeting them in October last year. There were then discussions between my officials and the Law Society in January, March and June of this year. I met them in May, and then there were subsequent meetings, as I say, in June, and the regulations came in on the 1st of July. I was always very clear with the Law Society that the regulations were going to come in. I had to bring them in on the basis of the information that had been provided to me. As Minister for Justice, I would have been completely negligent in my duties if I didn't take into account that the cost of criminal legal aid in the District Court increased by over 100% since 2015, notwithstanding the number of cases going down. But also my sole focus, and I'd appeal to solicitors as well, all our sole focus should be on what's in the best interest of the public and the best interest of court users.
But they say that they were never genuine negotiations with you or your officials. It was just an opportunity for you to explain a decision you made to them, one that you weren't for turning on.
That's incorrect. As I said to you, and I put out a very lengthy statement yesterday where I detailed all of the engagement between myself and my officials and the Law Society, because the narrative...
But you were committed to the flat fee from the outset and you've never budged on that.
I know, but sorry, engagement is about listening to what they're proposing, me advancing to them while I'm taking it, and I have to make the decision. I'm the person who, in law, is designated with responsibility for the criminal legal aid scheme.
And how committed are you now to that reform and to keeping that flat fee structure exactly as it is?
Sorry, of course I will listen, and in correspondence to the Law Society, I did indicate I would keep things under consideration such as the split payment, just so as your listeners are aware, because it's a complicated issue in terms of the detail. The old fee payment was €240 for the first appearance and then €60 for each appearance after that. I've introduced a flat fee of €520, which is the equivalent of 5 appearances, the 240 plus 460s. And that, I believe, is appropriate and fair, considering that the research I conducted shows that the average length of time for a criminal legal aid district court case is 5 appearances. So that's been put in. But however, I will listen to the Law Society. If one of the things they mentioned was about a split payment, if they want my proposal is that the 520 is paid at the end of the case. If they want to come to me and say, listen, they want to have a percentage of the 520 paid at the beginning and a percentage at the end, I'll listen to that. But I have to say, it was only since yesterday evening I got a letter from the Law Society, first time since the 1st of July to discuss this issue. So, I can't be criticised for not meeting them when they hadn't asked to meet me on the criminal legal aid issue since the 1st of July.
We had the Taoiseach, your cabinet colleague, Simon Harris, in here in Tuesday, and he said his experience, and I'm sure yours too, is that all disputes end in negotiation. It is your job to take down the tempo here, and he said you need to get into a room with people to resolve this. Why haven't you done that before now?
The Law Society wrote to me last night after I issued my statement yesterday, pointing out that no one has contacted me from the Law Society to discuss this issue since they were introduced, the new regulations, on the 1st of July. I'll contact the Law Society. I'm happy to meet them next week. I'll listen to what they have to say in respect to it.
Are you then saying that you want to try and find a compromise here?
To be clear about one thing, I will consider issues in terms of the split payment that I highlighted. Another point that's been made is the children's court issue. But one thing I will not allow to happen is that we're going to go back to the old system, and this is complicated as well, where an individual is before the district court on, let's say, 40 charges of stealing from a shop. So it's stealing 40 different items. The practice that has developed is that solicitors are charging a fee and spreading it around the solicitor's firm of $240 or slightly lower than that for each charge. So that means that when you get into the district court for one charge in terms of theft, in terms of which has multiple counts in respect of it, that it costs a significant amount of money. I regard that as a system that I cannot stand over, and that has to change.
That's the story on the front, I suppose, of the Daily Mail this morning, that there is one solicitor who was representing a client who had 130 money laundering offences, and they charged 130 by 260
Well,
euro, and so
because-
they were getting 30,000 plus for this appearance.
Invoices are issued based on the charges that are made against an individual. Like I have a list of people. There are 90, in terms of like thefts, as I say, 78 counts of theft on the 8th of May last year, 77. I have pages of this where there's tens and like 50, 60, 70 charges which are laid against one individual in the district court. Yet a system has developed whereby the solicitor puts in a significant charge in fee in respect of each charge. Like I can't stand over that. If I was doing that, and there's a report that I've put up on the Department of Justice website, had that report come out a year from now and I had done nothing about it, like you'd be saying to me, why didn't you do something about it? A problem was identified for you. You were told that there was a solution for it, yet you decided to do nothing about it. I couldn't do that. And had I done nothing about it, I wouldn't deserve to be Minister for Justice.
So just be clear to the message going to solicitors this morning, who we will be speaking to after 11 o'clock. The €520 flat fee, you're not moving on
Can I
that.
just say to you, I got a letter yesterday from the Law Society asking me to meet them about this. I'm going to meet them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start negotiating on the airwaves. I'm going to meet them. I've given an indication to you in terms of issues like split payment in children's court. They're issues I look at. But I'm not going to start getting into negotiating over the airwaves.
But you are open to negotiating, is what I'm trying to get outside, because their big issue seems to be this flat fee. You're paying for 5 appearances, and they're saying there's plenty of cases where there's way more than that, and they're not working for free.
Sorry, the flat fee is going to stay, okay? The principle of the flat fee is going to stay. I'm not going to allow a situation where there's a system of payment in place which incentivises adjournments. And that exists at present. And I'd appeal to people to read the document that I put up on the Department of Justice website, which involved research of 350,000 criminal cases in the district court between 2022 and 2023. The detail in it is unanswerable.
But they would say, right, that research coming from your department as to why private, let's say, criminal cases took 3 appearances and legal aid cases were taken 5, that from that you have just extrapolated that was down to defence solicitors who were engaging in endless adjournments for profits. That's the assumption you've made.
That's not correct. There are reasons. There were too many adjournments in the district court. Everyone must agree with that. I am not saying that the accused solicitor is responsible for all the adjournments or that the prosecution is responsible for them. I'm sure it's probably 50-50. I would dump the detail because we don't record. The court service doesn't record who's applied for the adjournment, who's made the application for the adjournment. But what I do know is that there are far too many adjournments granted, and the effect of it is, like, I hear from guards who are told to turn up at the district court and the case is adjourned for numerous occasions. So not only is it the cost to the state of the extra appearances, it's also we're losing the resources of An Garda Síochána, who should be out in the street defending people, protecting the public, as opposed to sitting in court waiting for cases to come on, which in fact are then adjourned.
But what they're saying, what you've just said there, Minister, is that it could be 50-50, the reason here. It could be prosecution delays or it could be defence delays.
Yeah.
But it's only the defence who are being punished here.
Sorry, that's incorrect, because if the prosecution aren't ready now, the defence should be saying, Judge, strike out that claim. The guard has come here, he's looking for an adjournment, the case isn't ready, strike out the case against my client. Whereas, in fact, at present, the whole system is conducive and encourages to cases going back, to be adjourned, to be adjourned, to be adjourned. So this system is going to make the system much more efficient. And so I just want to emphasise, like, I have great respect for solicitors. The reason why I'm introducing...
They don't believe that.
Well, that's what I know. But the purpose of this is to improve efficiency in the district court for the benefit of court users. The district court, all our courts, they're not there for the benefit of legal practitioners. They're not there for the benefit of politicians. They're not there for the benefit of judges. They're there for the benefit of the public and court users. And I can't ignore the fact as well, when you look at the expenditure in the criminal legal aid system in the district court, it's gone from 19 million in 2015 to 40 million in 2025, notwithstanding the fact that the number of criminal cases has declined.
Okay, but do you know that more and more cases are attracting legal aid?
I know, but the reason for that, Ciara, is because of the multiple certificates. The fact of, what's it say in the front of the Daily Mail today, the fact that there's 130 certificates issued in respect of one accused who's before the district court. So one person who's before the district court, the solicitor is able to get 130 separate payments for that person. I'm surprised that the media aren't more incensed or concerned about that.
So is there a culture down, do you think,
Listen,
in the courts
I
that
have a
needs to change?
responsibility to try to make the system more efficient. I have a responsibility when it comes to public expenditure of money that I keep control of it. Like this is just, we're talking here about criminal legal aid in the district court. Like the total budget for criminal legal aid is 120 million, I think. It also, nobody mentions the fact that from the 1st of July, when I introduced these changes, I gave an 8% increase to solicitors and barristers for their work in the Circuit Criminal Court and the Central Criminal Court, where higher fees apply. Nobody mentions that. And in terms of the fee that I've set for the District Court, the 520, as I say, it's calculated on the basis of the 240 plus 4 appearances at €60 a day, which gives to 5 appearances, brings it up to 480, plus an 8% on top of that brings it to 520.
So you think they've done quite well, actually?
Listen, I think it is a fair resolution for a difficult issue, but I can't ignore it. And in fairness, I know solicitors are aware that it is an issue. Many of them are aware privately it's an issue that is in need of reform.
Given the fact that you say now, look, you are going to meet the Law Society on this, the flat fee you say is going to remain at the same rate, but you're willing to negotiate some other elements.
Listen, the Law Society asked to meet me. I'm going to do them the courtesy of hearing them and going to hear what they have to say in respect of it, okay?
Based on that, should that withdrawal of services next week, the 3 days that are planned, be withdrawn?
Well, I think it is more than regrettable. Lawyers have a duty to the courts and to their clients to provide them with the services. And if it is the case that people are on the criminal legal aid scheme and are retained by a client who's entitled to criminal legal aid, my view is, of course, they should provide the services. Absolutely, they should provide the services.
The solicitors that we have spoken to here on the programme, Minister, they seem willing to collapse the criminal legal aid system if necessary over this.
Well, I can't be allowed the system or the decisions of government, which is the support of the Oireachtas, which is voted in by the people. I can't allow decisions to be dictated to by one interested party or one interested group. Of course I listen to solicitors, listen to the Bar Council, I've listened to other individuals as well. But there is a purpose to having a government in place. I'm the person who has legal responsibility for setting the criminal legal aid scheme under the Criminal Legal Aid Act. There has to be some respect for the elected government. And, I would appeal to solicitors to recognise that their primary duty is to the court and indeed to their client, and if to recognise that what I'm doing is being done in the best interests of the public. And it is also true to say, Ciara, when you look at the earnings under the Criminal Legal Aid scheme, it is a scheme that is well remunerated. 30 years ago, as I said, when I started as a barrister, it wasn't. That has now changed. It is a very well remunerated scheme for solicitors and indeed barristers. And I think people need to focus on what's in the best interest of the public and the court users.
Ultimately, it is your sense here. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the behaviour. That's what.
Well, I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility for how the scheme operates within the district court, and there are problems with the district court scheme as it operates. I would appeal to people who are interested in this to look at the document that I've put up on the Department of Justice website. The system that is in place at present incentivises adjournments. It incentivises people to seek them and not to oppose applications by the prosecution for adjournment. And also the issue of multiple invoices for one accused who's before the district court is a practice that, I'm surprised I'm not coming under more pressure to say, how can you tolerate that to continue?
We have seen this a few weeks ago, Minister, with the Minister for Health, Jennifer Carroll McNeill, a standoff with the consultants that she ultimately won. Is that a bit of a theme now in this government? We're going to take on the elite consultants, solicitors, and we're not backing down.
No, first of all, I do not view solicitors as the elite. They are people performing a really important function within the administration of justice. It would unquestionably have been easier for me when I got the report within the department to say, do you know what? Let's sit in that for a while and let's do nothing about it. I wasn't prepared to do that. Not because I was fearful that subsequently it would be found out that I did nothing, but just in terms of my responsibility as Minister for Justice, I cannot ignore it. And it is not that I'm not a confrontational person, but I cannot ignore the fact that there are serious issues with the criminal legal aid scheme in the district court. A solution had been proposed and highlighted, and I'm in the process and I'm implementing it.
Last question on this topic. You've said, people need to respect decisions made by the Oireachtas, made by the Cabinet. There is full support here. What do you say then to Barry Ward from Fine Gael, who himself is a criminal barrister, that you're like Donald Trump going into Iran here? You had no exit strategy.
Well, listen, this is a complicated and difficult issue. And I just think that it is not an issue that is, but that benefits from people engaging in personalised attacks on individuals. Like, I never do that in respect of individuals. I think particularly in the Oireachtas, we should avoid personalised attacks on politicians. I'm doing this because I believe it's in the best interests of the Irish public. I've engaged with the Law Society before. They asked yesterday for me to engage with them again. I will. The way to deal with this is through mature, respectful engagement.
All right, let's move on to another issue that really dominated the news agenda for the last couple of weeks, and that was the issue of e-scooters, which we covered here on the programme, including that decision on Monday by a number of your Cabinet colleagues on where we go into the future with e-scooters. But I spoke to members of An Garda Síochána here on the programme, heard them on other stations, basically saying it doesn't matter what new legislation is brought in. Gardaí are not inclined to pursue individuals who are breaking the law on e-scooters until they are fully trained in pursuit, with very few of them are, and until they are indemnified. If that is their attitude here, Minister, is that a dereliction of their duties?
Well, no. Look, again, the statistics sort of contradict that narrative, because when you look at it, already this year, the Gardaí have seized 1,865 e-scooters and scramblers, and 1,400 of them are e-scooters. 793 prosecutions this year for dangerous driving on e-scooters. And even yesterday, we saw the Dublin Crime Response Team seize 11 e-scooters, 2 e-bikes and 1 scrambler. And what was interesting about the seizures yesterday was that the Gardaí used their drone unit to seize these machines. So that the Gardaí are out there actively doing their job. I fully accept, however, though, that I think we need to provide greater protection to An Garda Síochána. And that's why at our meeting last Monday, and I believe Minister Canny will be bringing forward proposals in respect of the Road Traffic Act, that I think we should replicate what they do and did in the UK, which is to provide a higher standard of protection for members of An Garda Síochána if they find themselves in circumstances of pursuit. Like at present in Ireland, the rules of careless driving, dangerous driving for An Garda Síochána are the same as they are for you and for me. And I think if a guard is in pursuit of somebody, well, then in that instance, they need a higher level of protection. However, no matter what laws exist, it is always a complex, spur-of-the-moment decision for a guard to make as to whether or not they exercise their discretion to go after somebody in hot pursuit. Unfortunately, technology is helping this because drones now, I believe, are going to be centrally involved in identifying the seizure of such vehicles.
Can I ask you about another story we covered on Monday in the programme? And I don't want to get into the details of this story because the issue is now before the courts, but there were reports of Gardaí having to flag a taxi in Dublin city centre because they were unable to get a patrol car. The patrol cars were sitting there, but they were unmanned. That's got to be a source of embarrassment.
Listen, the Gardaí, and I'm proud of this, I have very well resourced An Garda Síochána. I'm going to continue to do that. Like, I believe in fund the police. That's my policy when it comes to ensuring that the public are protected.
So why are they flagging cabs?
Listen, I don't know the circumstances of that case, but I can tell you the Garda fleet is bigger than it has been. I think tomorrow I'm hopeful that we'll have the largest Garda force in the history of the state. There's huge amounts of resources there. It may happen in situations where something on the spur of the moment happens. Like, I don't have the full detail of that case, but the Garda force in Ireland is very well resourced. If the Commissioner comes to me and says he needs extra resources, I try to facilitate it, subject to obviously financial constraints.
Okay, let me move on to the Irish Penal Reform Trust and their report this week. They were looking at prison capacity. It is running at 122%. There is massive overcrowding, and we see prison officers now today threatening industrial action. First and foremost, are you willing to engage with them? Do you think they need to be paid more?
Yeah, well, obviously, when it comes to public sector pay talks, I can't just start talking to the guards and to the prison officers. You know, it's done through Public Expenditure Minister Chambers, and there are public sector pay talks which are going to commence. In terms of the numbers in custody, at present there's 5,772 in our prisons. That's around 100, and you're correct, 121, 122%. I have started, and I've got €500 million to build new prison spaces. I'm going out to Clover Hill after I speak with you to sign a contract for the building of a new block there that'll provide capacity for 270 new prisoners. It is the case that historically that our prison capacity didn't keep in line with our growing population growth. So we do have extra work to do in respect of it, but there's work ongoing, as I say, in Clover Hill, Castlerea, and there's new projects at Midlands, Wheatfield, Docus, and there'll be an extension to the Cork prison as well.
But what they have said, and by they I mean the Irish Penal Reform Trust, is that the number of people being held on remand, that's people who are awaiting trial, people who are awaiting sentencing, that has doubled over the past decade. Is that driving prison overcrowding? And is that something, that culture of sending people to prison, holding them there while they're awaiting their trial, need to
but
change, do you think?
I've been in here with you before discussing our bail laws and people who are granted bail, and the question, I'm not criticising you, but the question from the public or that the media present on behalf of the public is, why is this person being granted bail? It's obviously the case that everyone who's charged with an offence cannot be incarcerated or remanded in custody. Like, obviously a district court, that's not going to happen. It's only in respect to serious offences for which you're charged that you would be remanded in custody. But there are a lot of serious offences where people are charged with, very serious violent offences or murder or manslaughter, where the court believes it is appropriate for them to be remanded in custody. And Clover Hill, as you know, is our remand prison. And that's why it's helpful that today I'm signing the contract for 270 new prisoners in a new block, prison spaces for Clover Hill.
They also have suggested that youth bail supervision scheme, I'm sure you're aware of it, that it's actually been a success and that it should be expanded. Would you commit to looking at expanding that to maybe women prisoners or young adult prisoners?
I've got a number. I got a report from Lorcan Staines in respect of the bail system. I'm aware of the IPRT system. I will certainly look at this. Obviously, it is preferable for people who are charged with offences that they're not remanded in custody pending the outcome of the trial. But there are certain times when it is appropriate. And if a judge believes somebody's going to flee the jurisdiction, and that can happen for serious offences, as we've seen recently, or alternatively, if a judge believes that there's a likelihood that the person will commit another serious offence, if not remanded in custody, they're decisions for the court to make. We've strengthened our bail laws in the past, and I'm conscious one of the consequences of that is that we're seeing more people remanded in custody.
Just before I let you go, I do want to ask you about the EU migration pack and the issue of immigration, because we are 6 weeks into that now and it promised faster decisions. Do you have any evidence at this early point that claims are actually now being processed more quickly?
Yeah, they are unquestionably being processed more quickly. But also what's more interesting is that the number of people applying for asylum in Ireland has dropped significantly. It's down by 45% since the legislation that was passed by the Oireachtas, the International Protection Act, was commenced by me on the 12th of June. So that's a very significant drop. And that people who are coming through it, like people obviously applied under the new system on the 12th of June, they're already having their appeals heard. So the system is operating very effectively, and we will see people who have been rejected at the appeal stage being removed, I'd say, in August or early September.
Well, your department did double the number of deportation orders, didn't they, over the last 2 years? I think it went up to about 4,500 last year.
Yeah.
How many of those people have actually left the state? Because that's been a concern before. You issue the order, you turn down the application to remain, and individuals remain here.
Well, up to the 17th of July, 1,279 people have been moved out of the state through whether it is deportation flights or voluntary returns or other types of forced returns. Because obviously people are removed all the time. Like, people hear about the deportation flights that they charter and they think that's the only mechanism. On a weekly basis, people are being removed on other commercial flights, and we'll see more of that in the near future. So listen.
So are you tracking those 4,500 deportation orders?
Well, I'm tracking the number of people who are forcibly removed from the country. But when it comes to deportation orders, like, many of them are voluntarily complied with. People leave the country because it is hard to stay here if you have a deportation order, particularly since you've no social protection. It's hard to work in the black market in respect of it. But listen, we need to, and I suppose since I've come into office, my priority has been to shift the balance more in favour of the state. There's obviously a conflicting rights here or interest when it comes to asylum applicants. There's the interest of the asylum applicants. There's the interest in terms of protecting the state. I and the Oireachtas have shifted the balance of those interests more in favour of the state. I think that was the correct thing to do.
In terms of the return hubs, right, which is one of the more controversial aspects, let's say, of this EU migration pact, you've said we should get involved with those. Has Ireland at this point, has your department identified or approached any third country that could host a return hub?
No, and where we are in terms of the European Union is that there is a returns regulation which has been agreed and has now been put in formal legal instrument by the European Union. That is sorry to sound complicated, a Schengen measure to which Ireland is not a party. Ireland's not a member of the Schengen area. So we will have to apply to opt into the returns regulation. That's something that I want to do. And part of the returns regulation relates to return hubs. So my view in respect of it is obviously keeping an open mind in respect of it. They'll obviously have to be human rights compliant. I'll have to look to see how they operate. Are they operating effectively? But I can't ignore the fact that other European countries at present are in the process of looking at places where return hubs may operate. It's a progressing and developing issue within the European Union, and it's not something that at this stage I'm going to exclude Ireland from.
So it's something likely to happen and something that we will join other EU countries in doing. It'll be sort of a shared return hub as opposed to Ireland going out by itself and
Correct.
negotiating.
And listen, if it's effective and if it is efficient and if it's compliant with our international obligations, I'm going to look at it. I'm not going to rule it out as some people have asked me to do.